started a company called After Hours Janitorial Service. And I was 20 or 21 when I started that. And when I got enough to almost just barely make my bills, then I left my job and I never went back to working for anybody else after that. Watched the people that were where I wanted to be. And if I couldn't talk to them in person, meet them, if they had a book, read their book and see how they did it. So a lot of biographies, studying how they did it, which gave me insights. And it also inspired me, if they could do it, that I could do it too.
This is about the journey, people's different journeys in life. And part of my assumption, having met a lot of people, is people look at somebody that owns a company and they don't realize what it takes to get there. So like through life and little decisions and pivot points. So with that, like when you were a child and your childhood dreams, ambitions, what was it when you were a kid? You were like, I'm going to be when I grow up.
I'm going to be a rock star.
Rock star? Yeah. Well, it's a good,
I'm a singer. Good dream. I'm going to do music.
So you went, because that was big early in your life and your career, right?
Yes.
So was that the dream? Was I want to be a rock star singer?
And I started out playing guitar probably at 13.
Okay.
And sang in church.
And then
I got recruited to be a singer in a band in high school.
Oh, cool.
They found me in church and their singer happened to be sick. And luckily for me, when she got well, they decided to keep me.
Yeah, never mind. You can stay gone. This is a better singer. So did you have did you have a lot of support when you were going into that? Because that's one of those things the parents are like.
No.
Right.
No, I came from a farming family. And,
so all of a sudden you're going to go do music.
And none of that made sense. I needed to go to college and become a word processor because that was the age of the future and everything but music.
Right. So it's very similar to when I grew up. It was like, go get a job, right?
Absolutely, a real job.
Yeah, a real job. And hopefully one with a pension, because then you're
Go get
set.
a real job. Right. Security. Something
Always.
secure.
So were there any early like core values that you did keep though?
Absolutely. Growing up in a farming family, I was in 4-H.
Okay.
So we did sheep, and probably from the first year I could join, I think you had to be 9, and then until you're 18. And in our family, it was all of us. I had older sisters. We all did it. That taught me a lot about finance.
Oh.
Because my dad bought our first land, but that was it. We had to budget for the project. You had to do almost childlike spreadsheets that you had to turn in for 4-H. So I learned a lot about money doing that.
So you had to follow the expenses, and then at the end, I never thought about that side. I would get the responsibility of, you got to feed it, you got to take care of it, but
all of that. But the numbers had to be there because I had to be able to purchase my next lamb the next year.
Right.
So I would reward myself. Like we were allowed to take a little bit of what we sold the animal for.
Okay. But you had to keep enough to buy it.
And then to find your buyers. I was from a middle class farming family. Most years were not great years. Right. I know what government cheese tastes like. And my dad would make me go in the sell barn and on sell day and go up to the farmers and introduce myself. When many kids were playing in the midway on the fair rides, I had to go out and sell my animal.
So he put that on you. It wasn't like, I know somebody.
I was a little young girl going up to cigar smoking, beer drinking guys in the barn and sticking out my hand and introducing myself and telling them what number my lamb was. So hopefully they would bid on it.
Mm-hmm.
And many other kids or family had set up bidders. They already knew what they were getting per pound.
Right. And you never did.
I never knew that.
That's an interesting early way into entrepreneurism, right?
Absolutely. I really hated my dad for that.
Right.
But on my first trip to Nashville, I was very nervous, had to put myself out there. And my dad came with me on that trip. And I told him, as much as I hated you for that, it was the greatest thing one of the greatest things you could have did to prepare me.
Yeah, for life.
Putting yourself out there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So he was a family of girls as a farmer.
Right.
I had a younger brother, but, the girls were the perfect ones, the older ones. And he worked us we all worked the same. I never knew the difference between a girl job and a boy job.
Oh, yeah.
You just had to work.
It was just the job.
And his favorite line was, "Crying's not going to get this job done, little girl." I hear that in my head today when I want to cry.
Well, yeah. So what about like, so you're growing up, concerns and fears of like that impacted later, like your ambitions or
Seeing, during hard times, seeing relatives come over and bring my mom groceries. Maybe it only happened once, but as a child that impacted me because she was embarrassed about it, and it was upsetting to her, which is upsetting to the children when they're watching things like that. And again, it may have only happened one time, but I can visualize that today. I can visualize where I was and seeing my aunts come in and her expressions. And that drove me. I didn't know from that point on. It was probably just one of the things that pushed me. But I just thought, I needed to work hard. I wanted something better for myself.
Yeah, so that you were never in that situation.
I was never going to be in that position. I just somehow knew.
I got to make sure that
absolutely
I'm not waiting for somebody to bring food so I can eat.
Absolutely. Okay. And my family, all of them, my siblings have done very well independently on their own. And I think a lot of that is because of having those struggles growing up impacted.
Yeah. And knowing that the way to get out of it is work hard.
Right. Which
or
was
work harder.
The success of my parents, having all their children be much more successful than they were.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. So another part of life is just overcoming obstacles, right? So especially on the music side, was there ever a time as you were doing that you felt stuck or blocked or like, I can't move forward?
So many times. Right. So many times. There are too many to count. Right. It's like a heartbeat. It's like, boom, you have the biggest highs and then the biggest lows in entertainment. That's what I learned from it. Right. And, you're on top of your game and things are going your way. And then the next way, everything crashes down depending on how many weeks a single was on, on the charts and moving up. Yeah. And counting the next week and looking for the next ratings to come in and then everything's crashing.
So you had a couple albums out?
I had one that was I had a lot of them that leading up to it.
Right. Yeah.
But the one that started getting major airplay was I always say I made it in the top 100, but not the top 40. So Nashville. Go on back to Bakersfield, little girl. We're done.
So you had your shot.
So I had my shot. I had 3 singles on the radio.
Okay.
The one that did the best was the one that I wrote. So it gave me publisher BMI Publishing, and I still have my first royalty check in a frame, a whole $91.
Nice.
First quarter.
That's the big money in entertainment, right?
No, and that was again something I learned managing a band before I had a manager and things like that. Was everybody else got paid? Everybody else was paid first,
right?
And it was very similar to managing business today. Same thing.
So
priorities.
Because I know in pro sports that there's a famous quote by I think Wayne Gretzky that everybody gets tapped on the shoulder at some point, no matter how good you are. That says, "Yeah, you're done." So it might be right away or it might be down the road, but it's interesting to hear that in entertainment because you always hear like people hanging on. What?
I think there's two views on that. Sometimes I'll say that you don't fail until you quit. Right. I was burnt out.
Okay.
And when that moment came in my life, I was tired of traveling and I still had the businesses going too. So I had that to come back to always. But I was just tired of the business of it.
So it all came together like, hey, we're not interested in doing any more projects. And you were like, well, good, because I'm not interested either.
Right. Okay. I was tired of it. But again, I never thought I would ever hear my music on the radio.
Right.
I never thought I would have one of my songs, make it that far. And my 7-year-old daughter at the time, she was on the road with me a lot. And she said it best. I overheard her talking to her friends. And she said, "My mom's kind of a little bit famous."
Kind of.
Ha! That sums it up. Kind of a little bit famous. So I get to tour with Winona and Judd and Willie Nelson and performed with Brad Paisley and just so many greats. So kind of a little bit famous.
Yeah. Well, one step, one degree of separation, right? At least you're share the stage, though, which is
absolutely
a small percentage of people.
And, I got to know many of them, and I had my own dressing room at one time. I started doing a lot of fair circuits. Sometimes that dressing room might be just a little outhouse, depending on what little town you are in America. And
making the circuit.
Right. Okay. Same city, same stage, different town, I'd say.
Okay. So how did those, whether you call it failure or just, okay, this isn't going away, how did those struggles affect you going forward? Like,
I say I never worked harder than music.
Oh, okay.
Music was harder than anything I did growing up in manual labor.
Yeah, and I don't think that story gets told a lot.
It was really, they worked me like a rental pony. They just, everybody's is hoping that they're going to make money off of their decision to work with you. So they want to, push you as much as they can to do as many shows. And I would do interviews, phone interviews till both ears would be hurting in a day, thanking the radio stations for adding my new single and doing one-offs for them. And then before shows, I would do interviews in whatever town I was in. Right. And sometimes I'd have to get up super early to be on a morning show. And I had played late the night before and been on the road. So that kind of stuff was really difficult.
Yeah, I think that's like any job. People see a performer on stage and think, oh, it must be nice just to go out and do a couple-hour concert or do a set. And they don't see that, well, yeah, the only way that works is doing all the interviews, trying to build a name in the business, right?
That's the work. The fun, the reason everybody gets into it is because they just love it.
Right.
It's in their heart, it's in their soul, it's part of them.
Right.
So they get to perform their art. That was the greatest time, was when I was on stage connecting with my audience, being in unison with my band.
Right.
The rest of it.
That's what now. So what was your strategy for like anytime adversity came up? Like something happens, you hit an obstacle. What's your kind of go-to of?
I would go through a lot of emotions.
Okay.
It might be, I want to go to bed, throw the covers over my head, and just stay here.
Right.
Maybe, you have to give yourself that grace to go through the initial disappointment in it.
Right.
And then there was something in me that pushed me that, okay, I'm going to figure this out. For me, I see things as puzzles, and I'm driven to want to figure out how this puzzle works. Right. So a day or two of maybe feeling sorry for myself. Today it's much shorter. It just might be an hour or two before I can snap myself out of it. And then get back at it.
So we'll get into your current, your company you were doing and currently running, but through that music industry especially, and end up being an entrepreneur, there's always inner battles, right? We're always the inner struggle with our self-doubts, with our, fear of failing or imposter syndrome. So kind of run through the two, like music industry, how did you deal with all? Because it seems like
failure is huge.
Right.
Obviously, everybody loves to tell you the statistics on it.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, that's probably the biggest obstacle in it. I think the drive of the art and loving it so much pushes you, and the pain of quitting is worse than the pain of staying in it and doing what you're enjoying and loving to do. Huh. So I think that's what helps, keep you going. The imposter syndrome's always there. Right. I still have it today. Oh, they're going to find me out. Whatever. Right. And I have always felt that I'm never pushing myself enough. I'm never doing enough.
Right.
I've learned through many counselors and life coaches and reading. I'm an avid reader. I usually have 2 books going on at once. Now we get audibles, which are great. I can use for traveling. That push you, that help me realize one method is I've written down every once in a while. You write down your accomplishments on a piece of paper and just take it in. When you meet a goal, take in what it took you to get there, the steps it took. Take in that you achieved that goal and just look at it. And when you do that, you feel like, wow, that's a lot of things that I've done. You don't realize how they've added up over time.
Well, I think that's an interesting thing of high achievers or people that want to be high achievers is they don't take time to celebrate those things.
No, you're just next.
You just go, right?
Next.
Okay.
Check.
Yeah.
Next.
And that, I think that's sitting down and writing it and being like, oh, like that happened recently when I sent out the thing about numbers, like the sizes of businesses. I was shocked when I looked at the actual statistics, and that's why I sent it out to the groups. It was like, what do you think it is? Because I was talking to like Tasha, and I showed her the numbers, and she's like, that's not true. It can't be true. And I was like, it is. 55% of businesses are under 5 employees. And then 31 are under 20. So 86% of small businesses are under 20 employees.
That's pretty amazing.
So then when you look at that, when you go up, it just exponentially decreases. So when you get up above 50, it's down to like 3% of all businesses.
I never knew that. Pretty incredible when you think about that.
So it was kind of a, what? Because as you're in it, it doesn't feel like it. You assume every other business is bigger than you are, right?
Absolutely. You think you're not enough. You're smaller. You're still pushing. You're still, you still want to grow. As an entrepreneur, growth is the most fun.
Oh, yeah.
That's what drives me during the day. The minutia of everything is everyday duties is but the figuring out the puzzle and pushing it and growing it and seeing it, the changes, that's what's fun. So that's probably why you check it off and it's next.
Right. So then some of the strategies you use are counselors, life coaches, journaling, reading.
Early days, it was on cassette tape. It was, the art of the deal.
Those days,
the art of selling, the mastering the art of selling anything. I think that was Tom Hopkins.
Yeah.
I actually saw him and took a picture with him. And it was the first flight in my life I ever flew first class. So it was a pivotal moment in my business growth and where I was. And my ex-husband and our daughter was with us. She was very, very young. And he was sitting right next to us. And I go, that.
Yeah, like, oh.
Tom Hopkins.
Why am I sitting in first class?
I go, I'm going to get a picture with him and tell him the story. And
thanks for the pivot or the mind change.
Yeah, one thing that always stuck with me is hurry up and get to your no's. Your first 10 no's, 11 is yes. And it's just statistics. It's just the numbers.
Yeah, I had a similar thing that, I was a PT, and I thought I was going to be a PT, and I started reading Tony Robbins, like The Giant Within. And then I realized that I wasn't fulfilling what I could. And that was my pivot point of, wait, I need to start looking at this differently. That I need to take control of this and what I want to do and become. So you've actually...
Great teachers.
Oh, yeah. And I think I did the same thing when I started business. It was, okay, I realized I didn't know anything about business. So I started reading everything I could get my hands on about sales and marketing and just personal development and mindset. And
you searched.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had to. I was like, because we know the statistics of business failure too, right?
Right, absolutely.
And that's what people all the time, like, so you did, but you early went in the music business. You already broke away, right? You took a different path.
When I was going into music?
Yeah, well, it goes back to the whole, like, the reaction you get when you tell people. Because I think it's got to be the same, right? Like, when you told them you were going into music, it was like the no.
Oh, yes.
And then you come back and go, oh, I'm going into business too. So two of the things with the biggest failure rates.
First was business.
Okay, the business
I guess
first.
Music was all along.
Okay.
Music was before I can remember I was singing.
So when did you start Bowman Asphalt?
When I moved out at 19, and I was working for a copier company. I was a receptionist
Oh, okay.
at a photocopying. They sold copy machines, and they had a janitorial service that wasn't doing a very good job. And I saw what the janitorial service was getting paid.
Oh.
And I asked the owners, "Hey, can I clean our building? Will you pay me and I can clean our building?" "Yeah, we'll give you a shot." So on the weekends, I cleaned the building, and I realized this is a pretty good paycheck. It only takes me, a little bit of time on the weekend.
Right.
I'm going to figure this out.
Oh, so you went
So I went into
janitorial
janitorial business. I started a company called After Hours Janitorial Service. And I was 20 or 21 when I started that. And I had older sisters in business, and they told me what I needed. Get your business license. You need PLPD and insurance. Get some business cards. And so on my lunch hour, I would go to the other offices near my complex, pass out my business card, ask how their services were. And when I got enough to almost just barely make my bills, then I left my job, and I never went back to working for anybody else after that.
I think that's one of the things you see, though, is the smart way to start a business, right? If you have a job, start a side hustle, let it grow to replace it instead of just going all in, right?
My trucking company today started that way. He was my foreman today. He's one of the biggest trucking companies in Kern County, and he supplies the majority of my trucks. And he started another company that Bowman Asphalt built, I say.
Right.
Many like that. And that was really smart.
That's awesome.
Small, methodical steps.
So you took the risk, though. So you mitigated the risk by keeping your job until you had income.
Until I had just enough where I could just make, I could pay for my apartment.
Right.
And, a little bit of food,
right.
the necessities.
Yeah.
And then it gave me the time to go during the days and start, during office hours. I was doing offices and start, garnering more business.
Right.
And then I started hiring. I wasn't good at that. That was another crazy train wreck. I hired my friends. At the peak of it, I had 4 employees, but they were all my friends. And I was still singing in bars at night, music.
Oh, okay. So you're doing the janitorial and doing music at the same time.
At the same time. Yeah. I'd go, music didn't start till, bars later. So I could go clean offices and then go,
So now, with a little bit of hindsight, though, if you look back and go, how do you feel now about that original decision to start your own business?
Actually, I've never really thought about that, Tim. I just saw the opportunity and thought it could be more lucrative.
Right.
And it was a pivotal moment, obviously. I mean, because I was working for myself. It was very scary at times because you're relying on yourself completely.
Yeah. So, but what led to that pivot point? So was it just the when you saw the opportunity? So you're sitting there making
I'm
X
sitting here
amount
looking at how many hours I'm working.
Right.
And then I'm thinking, looking at the paycheck I was getting for cleaning the office versus how many hours that took.
Oh, okay. So you saw kind of the value of that of time. Like
I could do, make a lot more money.
Right. So back then, so you're making barely over minimum wage.
Yes.
Or minimum wage.
I was probably minimum wage because I was the receptionist.
Which it wasn't.
I was doing dispatch.
Wasn't $15 or $16.
No.
I still think
I had a roommate sharing an apartment.
Some of my first paychecks is like, is this even legal?
Apparently it was.
That was a lot of work for like $3 or $4 an hour. No, this isn't good.
Yeah.
So you didn't have any foresight. You didn't it wasn't like, oh, okay. It's just, an opportunity. Let me start seeing if this works. And
I didn't have much. So it's not like I had a lot to lose.
Much to lose.
I didn't have much to lose. I knew I could always find a job.
Right.
I wasn't scared of hard work.
You can always go back, right?
It just seemed like the numbers just were a lot smarter at the time. Looking at the opportunity there, I thought, and it didn't take a lot of money to get into that business,
right?
Either.
Yeah, I think
a few supplies.
You can find those low entry point businesses, but
I, learned a lot from that helped me in the business I'm in today.
Right. So how does that pivot?
So when I met my now ex-husband, he had started a business as well, was an entrepreneur. And we each had our own business, both small businesses. Right. And we had a friend that his parents had a very successful paving business. And he lived on the Central Coast. And it was just watching him, and it's silly stuff. He had a Porsche and a new truck, and he was only 15 years old in his garage, not even with a driver's license yet, and had a beautiful guest house he lived in on his parents' property. And his parents were not, I don't believe they were college educated. They just had a really good work ethic and had started a paving business. And he ran the maintenance side of it, which is the seal coating and the striping of parking lots. Right. And we just thought, hey, this might be a good business to go into. Okay. Look what they have. Let's try.
So you went out and just got a striping machine?
Started with that. One striping machine. Okay. And learned the trade from him. And it was the same methods that I learned in other business is going out and hustling out there, trying to sell your services
in the business
in the beginning. But in the beginning, it was, there were trade magazines. We learned through trial and error. Right. There were, I remember we looked at a mobile home park. This is just an instance. You could get literally a bucket of slurry. Right. Which some of my employees today, and people will laugh at those people that you'll see them with a bucket of slurry and their squeegee, and they're out doing a little lot. But that's how we started. Right. And I always say, hey, don't laugh.
So you went into striping and the seal coating.
We did coating. It all just naturally, we learned the next step.
Okay.
We were both
start with striping, and it's like, I can get the seal coating, slurry coating, and striping.
So I look at mobile home parks. They were mostly little paved driveways. So I started going through, then it was the Thomas Guide.
Oh, yeah.
And going through the whole neighborhood.
That was a lot of fun.
And calling them, making calls. Hey, can we, $65 to do your driveway? And nice. We would get out there and throw that slurry on it and then go on to the next one and say, hey, we just did so-and-so's house. Oh. Did you see that? Would you like us to do yours?
Door-to-door seal slurry coating.
And then we started figuring out how to do little patches, and we just grew very slowly. My first employee came on a year into the business. Okay. He's with me today. Wow. 34 of the 35 years. He's retired a few times, but his wife puts him to work, and he says he doesn't get paid, so he still keeps coming back.
Like, all right, I'll come back. So it was the same thing, though. You just were organically growing it, right? Like, what's the next step up? Because now you do the full asphalt work, right?
Today, the customers that I striped and worked as a subcontractor for and striped for are my customers. They buy asphalt from me.
Yeah, so you not only do the asphalt, but you manufacture asphalt.
Mm-hmm. And that was something that our friends' parents never went into either. That was, again, the entrepreneurship of always wanting to grow and what other piece can come from these businesses. What other opportunities in these businesses that we're spending money in that we could incorporate ourselves. The reason manufacturing happened was because we couldn't grow the business any further than what it was.
We didn't have the product.
Right. In order to grow, we had to have an asphalt plant to compete in a larger scale, at a larger scale.
Well, and also it's a level of protection too, right? That if you're making your own, you don't have to worry about somebody cutting you off or saying.
That was the big driving force behind it, because we were doing jobs at the time that were I would say would be selling out the plant. So the asphalt plant that we were buying material from, the production for that day should have been all the material for our jobs. There was no room to sell to another customer. We needed the max that that asphalt plant could perform. Okay. And our jobs might be running behind. And you'd go to that plant and have someone go check, and there would be other customers coming in, and they were in the same business, so they're fulfilling their jobs first. Right. And that was slowing our production down and bringing down our profit margins and making our jobs last longer than we had bid them for.
Yeah.
So it was a necessity if we wanted to grow and to be able to compete. But
to go from that to now, that's a pretty cool story, right? The people that you used to work for are now buying your product.
Yeah, it's really neat. I talk to them sometimes about it, and I'm grateful for those opportunities of growing that way and seeing today where it is. That's what's fulfilling.
So I think it's so just tying the pieces together, right? So that early FFA going up in
4-H
or 4-H, I mean, talking to men, because being a female, and we've talked about being a female in a predominantly male world, but you had learned that at an early age, like
because my dad had a bunch of girls.
Right, he treated there was no difference, right?
And there was no difference. I didn't know the difference, and I do believe that is the key behind myself being able to push myself in these type of industries and not being as intimidated by it.
Right.
I laugh because you're always underestimated. I always say, it's good to be underestimated because there's only one way to go from there. And they don't pay attention to you.
Familiar, Mo?
They don't pay attention to you as much. So they don't pay attention to you until all of a sudden you're winning.
Right. Yeah.
That's when they think.
When you get to a certain size, when I'm working on this entrepreneur plan, it's like there's that pivotal time in business where you get big enough to start making noise that you start getting the attention of the bigger people. Like, uh-oh, who's this little upstart that's starting to
when they're talking about you? Okay, you're onto something.
Level of success, right? But then now that you own the company outright through the issues and like
I've been the CEO now for 6 years.
Okay. But that was another pivot point we've talked about, right? Like when you came in to take over running the company.
I'd been the vice president since we founded it in 1990.
Yeah, so you had the history.
Right. And so I'd been there through all the years. During the music, it would take me away, little bits at a time. Mostly that was during the summer fair circuits and things, but I was back and forth. And then I'd come back to my real job as, musicians.
That must have been a crazy time, though. You go from being on stage to
it's
doing
so
asphalt
humbling.
work.
It's so humbling.
Okay, that was one of my questions.
Yeah, you have to stay grounded.
Right, so that was like...
Right.
Yeah, no fun at all.
Absolutely.
But I think that's actually part of like maintaining like your balance in life and staying grounded is just knowing like, hey, this is what it is, right? Like,
you're signing autographs one day, and I'm trying to do collections and billing the next day and meeting customers.
Why is this such a pain?
Yeah, I'm still signing my autograph. That's kind of the ironic, funny part in this. When I look at my life, that I grew up wanting to be a rock star, and today I sell rock.
Yeah,
and you use it to make asphalt. And I practiced my autograph in high school quite a bit on my little peachy folder, which is what we had back then. If you're old enough to remember,
I remember those.
And today I sign a lot of autographs.
Yeah.
They're on paycheck.
Yeah, exactly.
Subcontract.
It's all that work of like signing contracts, signing paychecks. Like I always thought it'd be cool to sign, but it's like,
right.
I don't like signing these. Yeah. These come with.
Yeah, they want my autograph.
Yeah, all the employees and all the vendors are like, yeah, we'd love to have your autograph.
When you have a dream, God has a good sense of humor.
Yeah. Oh, you want to sign a lot of stuff? Okay, here you go.
There you go.
It's not going to be pictures. It's going to be checks.
Absolutely.
So how do you then, so as you grow and become successful in business, there's that, everybody talks about balance, but I think it's more like just staying, how do you get fulfillment now? I mean, obviously the business and the success, but what else do you do that's like, just to keep the tanks full and emotional, spiritual, physical?
I say my workouts, I swim laps. I say that's my therapy. Right. I'm always reading still. I love history And so I like historic documentaries, and I like reading books about history. And there's so many lessons in those things too. And
successes and failures.
Right. So that kind of thing I meditate.
Yeah.
I've been meditating for, it's probably been almost 20 years now. Okay. When I first started it was kind of woo-woo. People didn't know so much about it. And I had a friend and his parents meditated. And I learned that early on.
Oh, cool.
Seemed to really, and they were business. She was actually one of the driving forces in a construction business, but it was residential construction, and was one of my mentors. So I just saw them meditate, and it helped them with more energy and to stay focused and grounding them.
Huh. Yeah, I think that's the thing of owning a business, right? Is because back when we were growing Terrio Therapy, and it was my energy level that was the problem. Like when I get home after 10, 12 hours a day, it wasn't physically demanding, but I was just totally drained of both mental capacity and just energy. I just felt like I got nothing left.
Emotionally draining.
Oh yeah, that too. Like losing jobs or checks not coming in, but checks needing to go out.
Yep. Balancing cash flow.
Right.
I mean, it's all the same. I say it's all the same this many years later. It's just different size checks, different size jobs, different numbers. It's just different numbers.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. Like
it never ends.
Yeah. It's just a different level of numbers, but at the end, it's only one that matters, right? And that's how much you have left after.
Yeah. And I think spiritually, you get to a point, I'm much more confident in myself. I believe in God. Don't judge people, whether you believe in a tree or a bush or whatever your belief is.
Right.
But that's what helps ground me. And that's because I've had the rug pulled out from under me many times.
Right.
And that's all I had to fall back on. It's something I grew up with.
Right. So religion was
indoctrinated religion initially.
Yeah.
I don't follow that. I don't feel it has to be a certain form and in a certain way. I think to each their own. Right. What works for them. I learned what works for me.
Right.
And there is a big freedom in the cliche of saying letting go. Mm-hmm. But I've lived it. I've lived it where I couldn't rely on anything else but that. And I equate so much of my success to having given that power up. And it's humbling, and it takes the weight off of you. Right. And when you can put it on God or your higher source.
Yeah.
And
God, the universe, whatever. And
it literally is. There's a day that maybe you can only get up and take one step, but you're taking that step to get through those times.
Yeah, there are those days of, especially as you're either starting it or when you're right at that pivot point of growing to the next size, and it's like
chaos.
Yeah, just oh my gosh. Well, and that had to be all along the lines, right? When you went from a bucket of slurry coat to, we got to buy this machine. Now you're up to buying crushing machines, and
it's just bigger. It's still machines.
Yeah, just bigger, more expensive pieces, right?
Yeah, bigger and more of them.
But I think that's that goes back to that, like the self-doubts and the imposter syndrome of, why do I think that I can keep getting
Sometimes
big?
I think I don't think in those situations.
Okay.
Sometimes it's just a necessity.
Just do.
In order to get the job done or get to the next level, which is usually what is driving me, is getting to that next level, getting this certain project done. It's out of necessity. I tell younger people when they are looking to go into their own business or whatever their dream is, it's a mix of, oh God, I think I want to throw up.
Yeah.
And catching your breath and thinking, okay, that we can do this. I can get through this. And it's a thrill too. Today I've surrendered to, I love that thrill.
Okay.
But only to a certain extent. There's other people that I admire, and I see they just push themselves and they take huge risk I'm slow and methodical. I'm not going to risk. I take educated risk.
Right.
Not to say theirs aren't educated. I admire them. Sometimes they get to the place I want to be much faster than I do. Right. I'm the turtle,
right,
not the hare, but I'll get there.
I think there is that level of I always say, if you want to be in business, you better get comfortable being uncomfortable, because there's nothing comfortable about. Yeah.
What can you stomach?
Yeah. Like, how much can you take? Like, and I think that's what trips up. But I think there's always the critics and cynics when you do stumble, whether it's family or
it's expected.
Friends. Yeah.
And
see, I told you that this was a bad idea.
And it makes them feel more confident about maybe they didn't do something in their lives that maybe they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it makes them more comfortable when sometimes they see people close to them fail.
Yeah, because it's like, see, I was smart enough not to go do that because I knew.
I think I was younger of my siblings, and there's a lot of lessons in getting beat up and told, well, you can't do something all the time and what you have to do. And there was an inner drive that drove me when someone tells me you can't do this. This isn't you. There's no way you can do this. This is impossible.
Yeah, I like your analogy earlier, because I look at it the same way. Like, this is just a puzzle to be solved. It's like a riddle or a puzzle that has to be solved. And I as long as I have all the information I need to solve this riddle, and I still do it, where it's like starting some new businesses, which has been a weird thing to go from a large up to starting over again. But it's that weird, like, okay, what am I doing? But keep moving forward and going back to just relying just on, okay, it's just me again.
Mm-hmm.
I used to have a whole team that would help. So it's just building that. Okay, you've done this before. Just remember how to do it. Remember the steps.
And you have resources. You always know someone, or there's a book on it.
Yeah, and I think connections are the big part. Mm-hmm. So that was
networking.
Yeah.
Asking someone for help. There were so many stages in my business that I would have to reach out that I didn't know, nor did my ex-husband at the time know.
Right.
Neither one of us were college educated. I went to junior college, but quit before graduating, and had to reach out. But subcontractors that we were working on, we were a sub to their job. They were helpful. Their office staff, I'd ask my first prevailing wage jobs and how to do the payroll. They were always happy to help. You just have to ask.
Right.
You know?
And I think that's, again, being humble enough to ask.
Mm-hmm.
To say, oh, I don't know this. Like, I'm going to ask. And I think and I was the same way as I was growing my company. There's times where you got to go outside and get mentors or get experts that are at least temporary structures to help you continue to build.
Yeah, and during those times, couldn't afford to hire someone else.
Right. Yeah, you don't have the extra cash
to pay for a consultant to come in.
Right.
So that was the only choice. So was to reach out to someone and ask for help. Yeah,
I remember some of those conversations where somebody would refer me to, go talk to so-and-so. Oh, man, this sounds good. And until you see the sticker price, then it's like, well, thanks, but I'm nowhere near being able to afford you. So
exactly.
I guess I'll go find a book but I think that drive of, instead of just quitting and saying, okay, this is too much, I can't do this. It goes back to that drive you had of, okay, I need to go if I can't afford that, I'll figure it out this way. Right.
And I think that goes again back to farming family. We couldn't afford to, sometimes my dad couldn't afford if a tractor broke down to wait on a part, or he couldn't afford the part.
Right.
And he became a great fabricator because he knew how to weld and put things together. And so we didn't have the luxury of, we can't get this job done. We had to get this job done in order to feed the family.
Yeah.
And so my dad would always just say, figure it out.
Right.
So I just always think, figure it out. What does that look like to me? Is that asking for help? Is that going at the time to the library? There's got to be a trade magazine somewhere. There's this a seminar somewhere that I can go for a weekend.
Yeah, we didn't have all the online.
No. Today it's whole nother world.
My shock
Wonderful world.
think about 10 years ago, I went back and got my doctorate in physical therapy. It was mostly online. I was like, man, I don't have time. And I think I was talking to one of the program directors. I was like, yeah, I'd do it, but I don't have time to go to the library and like find this stuff. And he's like, what are you talking about? You can just go on Google and like /scholar and pull it. I was like, what? Where was this when I was going through school? Like,
amazing today.
Where was this one?
Technology we have.
Yeah, like
fingertips makes things so much easier.
Yeah, now I think it's just got to be careful of who you're listening to.
Absolutely. And you got to differentiate.
You got to vet like, thanks for that idea.
Yeah.
And what I've come to find now is a lot of those consultants that I talked to early on knew that area, but had never actually run a company. They had trained to be like a coach or a consultant in a certain area. And I was like, well, wait a second. Unless you've sat in that seat, it's a whole different world. And now I look at it as just like college, the knowledge you learn and even reading a book doesn't matter until you apply it. If you don't know how to apply it, you can read all the theory in the world, but
it's taking that first step.
Right. And
I did learn early on, before we had, all the resources we have today, to watch the people that were where I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And if I couldn't talk to them in person or meet them, if they had a book, read their book and see how they did it. So a lot of biographies and studying how they did it, which gave me insights. And it also inspired me, if they could do it, that I could do it too.
So when you guys first started, what did you think success was going to look like? What was success at that time? If we could just get to
buying a Porsche.
Oh, that's a pretty big level of success, right?
Having a beautiful
so it was already you had your visions at a pretty high level then.
It was pretty silly, and like when I look back now, it was, wouldn't it be really cool to have that stuff?
Right.
Now.
So so how has that changed though? So how does your definition of success now versus when you started 35 years?
30, it'll be I think it's 34 years, it'll be 35 years, 2025. A Bowman Asphalt.
Right.
And being an entrepreneur is longer than that. I think as you go through the journey, once you hit the goal and you're able to buy whatever your dream car or your first class flight, you realize, wow, this is really cool for this amount of time.
Right. For a moment.
And then what really brings me fulfillment is many of my employees have been there for 25 years, 20 years, 15 years. They've been there through the struggles.
Right.
I know what it took to start. I've, managed so many different of the jobs myself. I wouldn't ever want to go back to that, to striping and holding chalk line.
But you've done all
that.
But
I've done it, and it's fulfilling. I don't wish the hard times upon anyone, nor myself, but those things make it worthwhile today.
Right.
Seeing the families in my company today, providing the living that these companies are providing for them, and their children growing, and some of their children coming to work for me today is really inspiring. It's so fulfilling. Makes all that. And the stuff is, sure, it's nice to have stuff, but it's just stuff that's not.
So that's where your fulfillment comes from. It's like, look at this. And I think something
I'm
happens.
in awe of it.
Yeah.
Again.
I
think, God, you did amazing.
Yeah. Like
how you used me is incredible.
Right. But I think
I'm not that smart.
You almost take or at least I did, a protective role of those people, right? That I'm not going to do anything. I want to make sure, because I realize
inspiring responsibility,
right?
And I don't take it lightly, and I don't take it for granted.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful to have that overwhelming responsibility. Mm-hmm. It's so precious to me. That's the greatest jewel of money. Can't buy that.
Oh no,
that they are the most important thing to me in my business.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, I'm going to protect that, right?
Absolutely. And you see, it's in a community, the people that are working on within your business, and their families and their children going to school, and the subcontractors and the vendors that you're using, and on and on and on, supporting their companies and their families.
But it reaches bigger than that. So there's Bowman Asphalt, but it's a more you have more than that going on, right? So there's Bowman Asphalt.
I have Bowman Leasing.
Okay. Which leases out equipment?
Yes, it basically leases equipment to the companies. It's another entity.
Okay.
And I have other I get bored easily. I think many probably other entrepreneurs I've met do as well when things are just running, and people say, "Why don't you
it's
just
kind of
stay
what's
where you're
next,
at?"
right? Yeah.
And then I'll look at within the companies, where is there another opportunity to grow?
Okay.
What are we using that maybe we could start that division? Okay. And so I have ideas for the future
of how to
that.
Yeah. So more like vertical that integration.
I need another puzzle and chaos, I guess, to figure it out. And
well, I think it becomes weird though, because it does become that idea of, okay, because once you solve problems for a long time, you start looking for the next problem to solve, right? Like, what's the next challenge? And especially when somebody tells you, "Oh, this is really complex." Like, just wait. So, do you look for the bigger challenges, or do you look for the?
I have the challenges that are really big, that people will laugh at. Those challenges, those are dreams that I'll have, and then I just have the bite-sized ones.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, a combination, right?
Right. Until I can get. I like to tell. I used to tell my kids this: if they don't laugh at your dream, it's not big enough. Go back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
Because they're always going to laugh.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If you say I'm going to do
again,
because if you'd have told them back when you started that, hey, someday I'm going to be here.
If I'm looking at my life and God even told, they show me this, I would have laughed. Huh? Right.
This is your plan, yeah.
I don't believe where I'm at. It's again, I'm in awe of it.
Right.
It's hard to. There's so many, and again, I can't take credit for it. There's besides God, number one, there are so many people involved that mentored me. Mm-hmm. Books, like I said, people that answered the phone when I called for help.
Yeah, and I think that's that misnomer of the self-made man or woman. It takes a lot of
hire people much wiser than you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Like and to look for that and to be willing to do it.
You have to accept, you have to let go. Again, that comes back to letting go.
And the humility of, hey, I only know this much, but if I can bring in somebody that knows more than I do, I'm not afraid of that. I understand that that's what I need to continue this.
And that's where your imposter syndrome can come in, because I'm in a room with people that are engineers, civil engineers, and just brilliant at what they do.
Right.
And I can't begin to understand the depths of their understanding of some of the operations and the details of my business that they run. But I have an understanding to be able to make decisions. I can make decisions pretty quickly by asking the right questions. I'm not paralyzed by the details. Many of them are paralyzed by the details of their specific area.
Right.
Because of doing this for so long, I can see the big picture and how all the pieces work together. There's a lot of different pieces in my business.
Yeah.
A lot of different aspects of it, but they
it's
all
not as easy
together.
As you're just going to go lay some asphalt somewhere.
Right.
It's like,
there's lots of different divisions, but they all work together. And I can see how in one area of my administration, they might not understand how much they need the other area. Mm-hmm. And how important it is. And when they see me making a decision that they think isn't as good, maybe we don't need that piece.
Right.
Because they're not seeing that piece.
Right. Yeah, I think when you see the whole thing, you realize that they're only seeing a certain part of it. And they're looking at how does your decision affect their little piece of the world.
They have their planet.
Right.
That they're just in their little one, and I'm managing
the solar system. So I know
how that planet works with the other.
Well, that's a good analogy, right? Because just like the solar system, if one spins out of control, it could take the whole thing out.
And you need the people with the best, the that are the wisest in each one of those systems.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah,
Because
you need each planet operating.
Absolutely. I'm maybe good at being able to make decisions, but I need their details and their expertise in order to help me decide what direction I want to go.
So I read this book, and when I read it, I realized that's how I had always kind of seen things, and it's called Who, and basically it was like, find the who's, not the how's. Like, you could have gone and said, oh, geez, I can't grow until I go get my engineering degree because I need to know how to do that. It's like, no, you need to find the person that's good at that. The who can I work with that already knows that better than I could ever know it, and put those pieces together. So
that to me was, I didn't have the resources to hire and things like that early on. I had to rely on asking questions and talking to people that would respond.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned one example early on. I was showing dogs, and this was a hobby. And the first time I went in the ring, my dog got last, and the judge, they had a loudspeaker. They would talk about why they placed certain dogs. And they sent me to the end of the line, I thought. And then the judge announced over the loudspeaker in front of a bunch of people, number so-and-so, you need to leave the ring. My dog was so bad it couldn't even be in the ring.
Oh.
It was humiliating.
Yeah, that's a humiliating.
And then I looked at it like after I licked my wounds,
right.
Cried a few days. How do I figure this out?
Right.
And then I researched who's winning in this breed. What are they doing? Do I have a connection to them? Can I talk to them? And I started picking their brains and asking them. And they were happy to share their stories and their hardships and what they went through. And I learned from them.
Yeah. So because you raised Rottweilers, right? Mm-hmm. So, but all along the line in your story, it's like that willingness to not accept, like, okay, I'm taking my dog going home. This was a mistake. I should have never done this. But by learning and growing, you actually did have some champions.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, I had world champions.
So you had world champion Rottweilers. So another
10 years
success.
I did it for 20 years.
Okay.
I did it for the competition of it. When I reached the pinnacle of it, it was again boring and not satisfying. And,
where do you go from there?
Yeah. So that's when I quit doing it. But again, it was just like so many. The foundation is the same.
Right.
It's figuring out the puzzles, who are the intricate people, what are they doing here? How are they doing this? And then mimicking those things, and then finding ways that make you unique in your own niche in it, and what defines your area in that. For me, it was what defined my kennel at the time.
Right.
And then just, step
so you've
by
actually
step.
done it 3 times. You hit a level of success in music, became world champion dog breeder, and now have a thriving business. Do you ever sit back and go, dang?
I think those are the weirdest combination of
those don't go together.
Of hobbies that turned into successes that started out. I mean, the dogs was a hobby. Music was a hobby that, the key with all those things, I was passionate to learn. I was driven and excited about it. So the work, I was obsessed with studying it. And inevitably you put enough hours in and you become pretty good at it. The dogs was 10 years before they started paying for themselves and paying for their trainers, and the benefits started coming back. Something I never looked at in the dogs ever, because it was just, I had a love for the breed and the hobby in it.
But that's actually the 10 years is like the 10,000 hour rule, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it takes
outliers.
It takes you that long. So the overnight success isn't there. If you'd have 2 years into it been like, okay, this isn't going anywhere, you got to put in that time. And I think the other part of that was the deliberate daily discipline of, how do I get better at this?
The gentleman at the time who was the best in the industry and competition in the Rottweilers, He was a legend. And I asked him one time, why do you share so much with me? You share all your secrets.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, Lisa, some people aren't going to work this hard. Majority of them are not going to put the time into this. And the ones that do, I get to have the reward of knowing that I was a part of their success.
That I influenced that.
And it's improving our breed. It's doing a great thing for this breed that we love so much.
But I think that goes into business too, right? You can tell somebody, like, here's what you have to do to grow your business. But the number of people that will actually do it, somebody can give you the roadmap, but if you're not going to go down the road,
you have to be really passionate about it. And asphalt's not sexy,
right?
It's not like I grew up one day, oh, am I going to be paving roads? Never in my wildest dreams did I think that, nor did I think the companies would be where they are today and have the successes that they have and as many employees. But it's the fun of figuring out the puzzle and how it works. And what I understand about myself is it's the entrepreneurship, it's the growth that I enjoy. It's the satisfaction of having that plan and then seeing it to fruition.
Right. And just overcoming.
But it's looking back at it, I don't ever want to work that hard in any of those industries. And I'm sure I'll have another moment of creativity, something that else I'm going to want to do in my life on top of the asphalt businesses as well. And I'll feel the same way that, wow, that's a lot of work, but it's just, again, one baby step at a time.
So there's that exercise of, if you could go back and give your 18 to 20-year-old self and tell them, what advice would you go back and give yourself at?
They walk in the room right now.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, what's up?
Yeah.
You said work What would you say?
Finish your my local college BC level to fruition in business.
Right. Yeah.
Having a little more business sense would have prevented a lot of mistakes early on.
Just some foundation.
If someone's not laughing at you, your dream's not big enough.
Yeah. I think that is unbelievable advice, right? Like, because it's the opposite. We think, so you get to the point where, do I even tell people anymore? Because
some of the books I've read said to protect it. It's like a flame. Your dream is like a flame, and everybody wants to put it out and protect it. I don't necessarily believe that. Everybody has an opinion. Some people are going to encourage you, but the majority of people are not, because some of the times your dream makes them uncomfortable.
Right.
And I just think that you just have to decide that, are you going to do the hard work for this? Are you going to dig down deep? Because there's times you have to dig very, very deep, and don't quit. Just, when I sit back on my rocking chair and I'm in my 80s or 90s, whatever it is, my mother's 90 years old and doing quite well. So I think I have a
little run there to go.
I just want to know that I tried.
Yeah.
That I gave it, a shot.
Yeah. You're not going to regret, like, oh,
I didn't do it. Yeah. Just try it.
Yeah. I was afraid to do it. And now
failure hurts. It's a little bit painful.
Right.
It sheds light on what didn't work and maybe where you need to pivot. And it's humbling, which is good, because when you get to that desired result, which you inevitably will if you just pick yourself up and keep going.
Yeah. So I think that's, two thoughts came to mind. One is, I saw somewhere, embrace the suck, which I think is part of, if you want to go into business, you better embrace it, because it's going to suck some days.
Yeah.
And nobody can prepare you for what that feels like. When it's like, just when those times in business where it just feels like everything's piling on and you don't see a way forward, because it just seems like it comes in those waves you were talking about. It does. Right? Of all of a sudden, all these things are going wrong.
You have a mountain.
Yeah.
You're always climbing that mountain.
Right.
The peak is very small when you finally get up there.
Exactly.
The mountain was really big.
At the beginning.
Cherish that peak when you're on the peak.
Right.
Cherish it.
Yeah.
Because the only way down is back,
It's the fall.
back
Yeah.
into that valley again, and then you're climbing back up again, or the heartbeat. I said up, adrenaline down, up, down.
Yeah, we were talking the other day in my other business group about the Maslow's or there's a hierarchical needs, and then there's the strata that's like stair steps up. But you never know when it's like the old game, kids game, shoots ladders. You don't know when you're going to hit the chute and go sliding back down and be like, what the hell? Like, I didn't see this coming.
I didn't see that. Out of left field, I say. There's so many things that come out of left field.
Going
like,
back.
wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Who would have thought that?
And sometimes you don't know, like the pandemic, it comes out of nowhere. It's like, okay, what do we do?
Those things help mold you, though.
Mm-hmm.
They help drive you because you're in something that you've never been in before. And everybody had to survive the pandemic. No matter where you were in life, you had to figure out how are you going to get through this.
Right.
It was a different problem depending on your situation, but it was still, how are you going to get through it?
And it did take a lot of businesses
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you learn through whether your business was taken out during those times of struggle in the economy, possibly, or if you've been through them numerous times, you can lean into those and think, I got through that time. How did I do it? And go back to those similar ideas.
But I think that's a key of what listening to your story is that, and I do the same thing. Like, you have a choice when you fail at something, right? You can quit and say, I shouldn't have tried, or you can look at it like you do as a learning experience of, so, okay, what can I learn from this and keep moving forward versus I'm taking my ball, I'm going home. And, right. But you've taken the other road every time. Like, all right, yeah, this sucks. What do I do?
There's always going to be another avenue. Another door is going to open. You've heard that saying many times. Sometimes you're just waiting on where is that door? What's pressing me more? What am I being asked to do more?
Right.
Maybe
and
that's
I think it's
where your opportunity.
that belief in God or the universe or whatever you want to say. Sometimes those things are, hey, you were this wasn't the path for you. That doesn't mean there isn't a path forward. It's just like, okay, that wasn't it.
Right. Sometimes you have to hit your head up against that wall quite a few times before you realize this isn't the right path. I'm thinking, God, you threw everything at me, even the ton of bricks, and I still kept trying to get through it.
Right.
And then I thought, okay, I'm done. Let's
learn my lesson here and pivot. I think that's a key though to growing your business, because if you think it's just all going to be smooth, it is that hard ups and downs, like peaks and valleys, and that's just normal though.
It is normal.
But it's not normal to anybody that hasn't done it. Right? So I think
a lot of people search for an easy way. They think there's an easy way, and there's, you can always educate yourself better in a certain area, and someone might have a better hand up than you did starting out. But there's always a way. You just have to search, find your way.
Yeah, and I think that you have that choice at each level to, okay, that's it. I'm good. I'm going to stay here. Right.
Right.
And I had those conversations through the years of, with my ex, and when this is enough, why do you keep going? I'm like,
what are you trying to prove?
Yeah. What do you have to prove to people? I'm like, I have to prove something to myself, because I have a very similar thing that I always go back to the parable of the talents, right? Like, what did you do with what I gave you? And I use that several times, like where I'd say, look, if I accomplish this by 40, there's something beyond that. Or am I going to, on my judgment day, go, hey, I did this. Well, you quit at 40 or 50. There was still more that you were supposed to do. So,
I think everybody's retirement looks different.
Yeah, exactly.
So I've surrendered to myself. I know who I am. I've been through enough. I trust myself today. And what I've learned is that I'm different that way. Many people are friends looking to retire, and retirement for me, they'll tell me, Lisa, you're ramping it up.
Why are you ramping it up now?
And why do you want to do that? Don't you just want to travel? And that sounds nice, you know, traveling and having that balance and things. But I say I think the longest vacation I've taken was my 2-week COVID break. And I think the most discouraging part of that was when I came back is that my office and my companies didn't skip a beat. I thought I missed them. They did just fine without me. That also is a testament to having great people and the right policies and so forth and amazing teams. But, you know, a good week or two, you know, I have a dream. Maybe I'm going to take a month off. I'm going to take a month of vacation and travel.
But you got to.
I have to have my hands in something exciting in this. I'm still excited. I'm excited to push myself. It's still fun.
I think that's part of it, though, too, of not being the bottleneck of information, right? Because I did that, too. We took a long vacation back several years ago, and that was my first test of, and even all my friends who own businesses are like, "Are you insane?" Like, I was like, "Hey, I'm going to find out if this thing's as solid as I think it is." And once I did it, then I found out, oh, I can take longer vacations. I don't have to be that. I've built my team up where they can operate. It doesn't hinge on me, which is you look at the growing of a company, when you hit that 20 mark, that's where that person's got to let go, right? You can't oversee that many people. So now you have to start building teams.
Right. In order to grow, you're not going to ever be able to grow.
But that takes some sense of humility to, okay, I'm not. And there's a switch in there somewhere like you talked about where it becomes about the employees, not because when you first start, it's about you and we're going to grow this thing. But at some point you realize, hey,
you're responsible.
Yeah, I got to
for the
take
incomes
care
of you know, all these people and their families. And when I see the children coming in my office and you know, it really touches you. You know, you realize, wow, you know.
So is it, because I know you got a place over at the beach, right? So you ever just sit out there and, because I love the beach and the ocean, right? But I was over there recently and I was just like, man, what a crazy life. Like, it was just that moment of gratitude and appreciation. And like, this is awesome. Like, I could have never, the kid that grew up in Montana would have never thought about having any employees, right? I was going to be an employee. But to look at all of our employees, and we just did on Sunday, Terrio Therapy did like a family picnic thing. And you go out to this park and it's several hundred, you know, the families running around, little kids, and it's just like, this is cool. And I just walked around talking to people. It wasn't like I have to get up on stage and do a presentation. It was more fun just walking around. Say, I have the same thing. I've got probably 7 or 8 people that have worked for me over 20 years. Yeah. And it's just like, and seeing them with, now their kids are in college and or getting into careers, and then there's the new young therapists that have the babies and the little toddlers. And it's like, look at the generational span of this. It just was a cool moment just to stand there and like, how cool is this that we now have been in business 26 years where we've hired some of our therapist kids to now work for us. And it's just and others are coming. It's like, how's that possible? Because they were little babies when I met them, and now it's just such a cool feeling.
Yeah.
When you get to that level.
I think because I commute here for work, so I'm here during the week and I'm there on the weekend, that I think I've appreciated and am grateful for it at least 6.5 days out of the 7 a week. Yeah. I mean, I'm just in a place in my life today that I am just so grateful and appreciative of what it took to get where I'm at today, and think I worked my whole life to get to where I'm at today. And I get to enjoy, again, looking and seeing the families and everybody else that's succeeded along with you. And the more I can improve their lives, and our lives together, we're a big team.
Right.
That's what fulfills me today. I'm a hometown girl, born here in Bakersfield, grew up in Greenfield. It's important for me to give back to the community. Being able to see what my companies can contribute to our community in that way is I never imagined any of this. I never dreamed any of this was possible. I never thought about it where I would be. I never thought any of that could happen.
Yeah, you didn't have
It's unbelievable to me.
Yeah, you didn't have the vision.
I'm in awe.
Vision board where you're like, oh,
I'm in awe of where my life is.
Right. But there's still more. You still have the fire, though, right?
Absolutely. That's why. That's why I say I get excited about. Sometimes too, I've learned to surrender. That's why I call this surrender, because sometimes to my own detriment, I get another idea and have another dream, and I want to pursue it. That's what's exciting to me. That's why I think, that's why I'm here still. That's why what's next?
Right. Yeah. And at some point you get into that. Like several of my friends that have done it are now in their 60s, and they're moving more into that sage role but they're finally looking at letting go and letting the company run on its own with whoever it's going to happen to be. But going more into that advisory role or the wise sage that people come to for advice. And I think part of it is like, how do you go out and teach other people just like they taught you how to be,
doing what we're doing here.
Yeah. So it's like, all right, well, how do I help others understand it?
I see that more as my role today. I have a amazing vice president, and he is the general manager, and I foresee him making those decisions, and I'll help grow the companies, and stepping back in the future. I see those things, but there'll be another dream, another point of inspiration, because I still love music and the arts and things and creativity, and it might be in another business idea, and maybe it'll come in some other form. I don't know what God has in store, but I know that it'll
you're not done yet.
Open, and I'll see. Oh, okay. I keep getting asked to do this. Maybe this is another area. A lot of people have asked about writing a book. I think, who wants to read my book? Silly, It
is an amazing story, though, that just because of the parallels of,
it's pretty crazy that
those two don't go together at all, right?
Together.
Yeah, none of that.
So I say, you don't want to be up here sometimes. It's kind of crazy.
Well, that's one of the funny things I think. Like, yeah, you don't want to be up here.
Kind of crazy.
I kind of feel that way though, because when I run into people now, they're like, "Oh, what are you doing now?"
Oh, you have so many different things going on.
Yeah.
Tim. You were just like that. You were just like that.
So I'm like a lot of stuff, like, because it's just like it's not worth the time to touch.
That's why you just surrender to it. And okay, well, I guess we're doing this now. This is fun.
Seeing what new stuff I can start and going from there. But well, good luck with everything, and just knowing you, it's going to be fun to watch, like what happens, because I think we share a lot of that. Like, oh, cool. Whenever somebody gives me an idea, it's like, oh.
Well, sometimes you're one of the ones I call, like, oh no, hey, can you help walk me through this one?
All right, but you're going to come up with something you probably weren't. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Your story is amazing. I think people are really going to connect with it.